The Columbus night was cold and unforgiving, a sharp wind howling outside the thin walls of a tiny apartment. Inside, the sound of a baby's cries cut through the silence. Emma Carter, exhausted and desperate, rocked her son Noah, her eyes red-rimmed from a mixture of tears and sleeplessness. "Please, baby, please stop," she whispered, her voice cracking. But Noah's cries only grew louder, a raw sound of pure hunger. Emma walked to the kitchen shelf, a place that offered no comfort. It was completely bare, save for a single, empty can of formula. She opened it again, a silent prayer for a miracle she knew wouldn't come. Nothing. Her heart sank. She reached for her wallet, flipping it open to find only 87 cents. A bitter laugh almost escaped her lips. 87 cents. What could that possibly buy? Pressing her hand to her forehead, she let the tears fall freely down her cheeks. She sank back onto the small, worn couch, the springs groaning under her weight. Noah's cries were relentless, a constant reminder of her failure. Emma pulled him closer, his tiny body trembling against hers. "I'm trying, baby. I'm trying," she whispered into his hair, her own body shaking with sobs. Her phone, lying beside her, glowed with a menacingly low 3% battery. With trembling hands, she picked it up. Her fingers, numb from stress, fumbled as she opened her messages and searched for her sister's name, Lily. She typed a frantic message, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Lily, can you send me some money? I need milk for Noah. He won't stop crying." She hit send, her breath held tight in her chest. The phone froze for a heart-stopping second before the message finally went through. A small sigh of relief escaped her, but it was short-lived. The battery icon flashed and dropped to 1%. Then, the screen went black. A soft groan of despair escaped her lips. She fumbled for the old, frayed charger and plugged it in. A weak, blinking light was the only response. Setting the phone aside to charge, she kissed Noah's forehead, his skin hot against her lips. His cries intensified, a heartbreaking wail that tore through her. And just like that, Emma started crying again, her tears mingling with her son's. Meanwhile, across town, the lights of downtown Columbus painted a different picture. Inside a sleek, modern penthouse, Jordan Hale was engrossed in his work. He sat at a large glass desk, the picture of calm focus, reviewing quarterly reports. Suddenly, his private phone buzzed, a sharp, intrusive sound in the quiet room. Jordan frowned. Almost no one had this number. He picked it up, his eyes scanning the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. He read the words, "Lily, can you send me some money? I need milk for Noah. He won't stop crying." His expression changed in an instant. The calm focus was gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling concern. He read the message again, slower this time, each word hitting him like a physical blow. He froze, the phone clutched in his hand. A memory, long buried, flashed in his mind. He was a little boy again, watching his own mother cry over a stack of unpaid bills. He remembered her face, etched with worry, as she skipped dinner so he could eat the last of their food. He closed his eyes, the memory as vivid as if it were yesterday. "Not again," he whispered to the empty room. "Not another mother?" His fingers moved quickly, typing a reply. "Who is this? Are you okay? Do you need help?" He sent it and waited, his heart pounding in his chest. A minute passed, then another. No answer. He tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. The silence was deafening. Jordan stood up, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. He paced the length of his penthouse, the city lights a blur outside his window. He sent another message, his previous calm completely shattered. Still nothing. He couldn't just sit here. He couldn't just do nothing. He grabbed his coat from the back of his chair. His assistant, who had been working quietly in the corner, looked up, startled. "Sir, it's midnight. Where are you going?" Jordan's voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "There's someone who needs help." He cut off any further questions. No questions. The assistant simply nodded, understanding the gravity in his boss's tone. Jordan handed him the phone. "Find the location of this number. Now." Minutes later, the assistant returned with an address scribbled on a piece of paper. Without another word, Jordan left the building, disappearing into the cold night. Back in Emma's apartment, a heavy silence had fallen. She had drifted into a restless, shallow sleep on the couch, Noah's cries having softened to weak, intermittent whimpers. She stroked his back gently, her movements slow and automatic. The room was freezing. The landlord had shut off the heater earlier that day over late rent. Emma wrapped Noah in their only warm blanket, tucking it tightly around his small frame. She shivered, her own thin shirt offering little protection from the cold, but she didn't care. As long as Noah was warm, the apartment was quiet now, a chilling, lonely quiet broken only by the soft, mournful sounds coming from her baby. Jordan's car cut through the dark, empty streets. He glanced at the address on his phone again, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He finally pulled up outside a run-down apartment complex, a world away from his penthouse. He stepped out of the car, the cold air hitting him instantly. The building was worn, the paint peeling, the windows dark. This was a place of struggle, of hardship. He walked towards the third building, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He found the apartment number and stood outside the small, flimsy door. He hesitated for a moment, then knocked gently. The sound jolted Emma from her daze. She sat up, her heart pounding. Who could be here at this hour? She heard another knock, louder this time, more insistent. Then, a deep, calm voice spoke from the other side of the door. I received your message. I'm here to help you and your baby. Sitting in his car, under the dim glow of the dashboard lights, Jordan stared at his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. Ava's last message, a simple yet profound apology, kept replaying in his mind. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. There was an honesty in her words, a raw vulnerability that struck a chord deep within him. He wasn't the kind of person who got involved, especially not with strangers. His life was a fortress, built to keep emotions and complications at bay. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, he found himself caring, and he wasn't sure why. Inside a sparsely furnished apartment across town, Ava held her baby boy, Noah, rocking him gently in her arms. A soft whimper escaped Noah's lips, a tiny, heartbreaking sound of hunger. Ava pressed her lips to his forehead, whispering reassurances she didn't feel herself. It's okay, baby. Mommy is here. Mommy, we'll figure it out. But beneath the soft words, a storm of fear was raging inside her. Her heart ached with a physical pain, seeing her child hungry and feeling so utterly helpless to fix it. The weight of her responsibility felt crushing. Just then, her phone buzzed on the old end table, the vibration startlingly loud in the quiet room. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, her breath catching in her throat. It was him, a message from Jordan. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she read the two simple words. Where are you? She froze. Panic shot through her. Was he angry? Was he going to yell at her for the accidental message? Her fingers flew across the screen, her thumbs clumsy with anxiety. Please don't be upset, she typed. I won't bother you again. I promise. She sent it, her eyes squeezing shut as if bracing for a harsh reply. Jordan read her frantic message and let out a long sigh. He leaned his head back against the car's headrest. This wasn't a scam. She wasn't rude or demanding. She was just scared. Terribly scared. He could feel her fear through the screen, a palpable desperation that transcended the digital divide. His fingers moved with a newfound purpose. I'm not upset, he typed. I want to help. Send your location. He hit send, his own heart beating a little faster now. The ball was in her court. Ava stared at his reply, her mind a whirlwind of conflict. Trust a complete stranger. It went against every instinct she had, every lesson life had taught her. But then she looked down at Noah, his small face scrunched up, his little body so dependent on her. His need was a powerful, undeniable force, greater than any fear she had for herself. This wasn't just about her anymore. She took a deep, shuddering breath, a silent prayer on her lips, and sent her address. The three dots appeared on her screen, then vanished. A moment later, a new message. On my way. Jordan put the car in drive, the engine humming to life. He pulled away from the curb, merging into the river of taillights that flowed through the city's gleaming arteries. The skyscrapers of downtown glittered like a forest of diamonds, a testament to wealth and power. But as he drove, the landscape began to change. The brilliant lights faded, replaced by the softer, more sporadic glow of street lamps. The pristine towers gave way to older, more modest buildings, their facades showing the wear of time. A strange heaviness settled in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite name. This woman, Ava, she must be truly struggling to live out here, so far from the city's shimmering heart. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. Finally, his GPS announced he had arrived. He pulled up to a worn-down apartment building, its brick face shadowed and tired. He double-checked the address on his phone. Yes, this was the place. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the unease he felt. He grabbed the small bag of groceries he'd picked up on the way, baby formula, some bread, milk. A small gesture, but it was all he could think to do. As he stepped out of the car, the cold night air hit him, a stark contrast to the warmth of his vehicle. It felt like stepping into another world. Inside, Ava heard the faint crunch of footsteps on the gravel outside, then the heavier sound of someone walking up the concrete steps to her building. Her heart began to race. Was this a mistake? She crept to the door, her bare feet silent on the cold floor, and pressed her eye to the tiny peephole. A tall man stood in the dimly lit hallway, his silhouette imposing in a well-tailored black coat. He looked completely and utterly out of place. like a character from a different movie who had wandered onto the wrong set. That must be him, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. Behind her, Noah let out another cry. Louder, this time, a sharp, insistent wail. Outside the door, Jordan heard the baby's cry, and it felt like a punch to the gut. The sound was so raw, so full of need. It tightened something in his chest. He raised his hand and knocked softly, not wanting to startle her. After a moment of silence, the lock clicked, and the door creaked open just a few inches. A pair of wide, worried eyes peered out at him. They were a deep, beautiful brown, but filled with so much fear and exhaustion. He gave what he hoped was a reassuring, gentle smile. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Jordan." From the message, she just stared for a second, then gave a small, shy nod, not trusting her voice. Jordan lifted the grocery bag. "I wasn't sure what you needed," he said, "but I got some baby milk and a few other things. I hope it helps." At the sight of the bag, Ava's composure shattered. A wave of overwhelming emotion washed over her. She brought a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob, her eyes filling with tears she couldn't hold back. No one had shown her this kind of kindness, this kind of unprompted help, in so long. Years. It had been years since she felt like anyone in the world cared. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Truly. Thank you." She opened the door wider to let him in. As he stepped inside, his eyes were immediately drawn to the source of the crying. On a threadbare old sofa lay a tiny baby, wrapped in a thin blanket. Noah looked so small, so fragile. Seeing him there, in this stark, bare room, Jordan felt something heavy and profound settle in his heart. This feeling, it wasn't pity, it wasn't charity. He hadn't driven all this way just to be a good Samaritan. He didn't know what it was yet, but he knew, with a certainty that shook him to his core, that something much deeper had just begun. This single act of kindness was not enough. Jordan stood in the doorway, still holding the grocery bag. An unexpected savior silhouetted against the dim hallway light. Ava hesitated, her hand trembling slightly on the door. Should she let this stranger in? This man who had answered a desperate plea sent to the wrong number. A soft, hungry cry from the other room cut through her indecision. Noah, her baby. The reason for everything. Taking a shaky breath, she pulled the door open wider, a silent invitation. Jordan stepped inside, his movements gentle, almost cautious, as if he were entering a sacred, fragile space. His eyes scanned the small apartment. It was impeccably clean, but the signs of struggle were everywhere. A broken heater stood silent in the corner, a sad monument to the cold. The furniture was old and worn, the blankets on the sofa thin and threadbare. A pang of something sharp and unfamiliar tightened in his chest. This was a world away from his own, yet the raw humanity of it struck him deeply. Ava reached out and carefully took the heavy grocery bag from his hands. Her fingers brushed against his for a fleeting second. "Thank you again," she whispered, her voice thick with an emotion she was trying hard to contain. Jordan just nodded, his own throat feeling surprisingly tight. "No need to thank me," he said, his voice softer than he intended. He could see the unshed tears glistening in her eyes. It was clear this simple act of kindness was something she wasn't used to. The thought that no one had ever helped this young mother, that she had been navigating this hardship all alone, was a heavy one. With slightly shaking hands, Ava pulled out the can of baby formula. The metallic pop as she opened it seemed to echo in the quiet room. Jordan saw her hands tremble, and a wave of concern washed over him. He moved a little closer, his presence a quiet support rather than an intrusion. "You okay?" he asked softly. Ava nodded quickly, a little too quickly, unable to meet his gaze. Her eyes were wet, and she busied herself with mixing the formula, her movements precise despite her shaking. She carried the bottle to the makeshift crib where Noah was whimpering. Jordan watched, his heart aching for her. The baby, sensing relief was near, latched onto the bottle with an eager desperation. The only sound in the apartment was the soft, rhythmic suckling and Noah's tiny, contented breaths. As she watched her son eat, Ava's tense shoulders finally began to relax. A wave of relief, so profound it was almost painful, washed over her. She sank onto the old sofa beside the crib, her body language a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. Jordan remained standing near the door, intentionally keeping a respectful distance. He didn't want to crowd her, to make her feel pressured or unsafe. But he also couldn't bring himself to leave. Not yet. There was something about this scene, about her quiet strength, that held him captive. After a long moment, Ava looked up at him, her gaze direct and questioning. "Why did you come here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. But the question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears and a sliver of hope. Jordan paused. He could have given 1,000 different answers. A polite, vague response. A simple platitude. But looking at her, at the raw vulnerability in her eyes, he knew she deserved the truth. You messaged the wrong person, he started, his voice steady. But your message? It felt real. It felt important. Ava's gaze dropped to her hands, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to bother you, she whispered, the shame of her desperation evident in her voice. Jordan took a step forward, shaking his head gently. You didn't bother me, he said, his tone firm but kind. You just needed help. Anyone would have done the same. But he knew that wasn't true. He knew how easily a message like hers could be deleted, ignored, dismissed as a scam. But he hadn't. He couldn't. Ava looked up at him again, surprise flickering in her weary eyes. Most people in her life had ignored her, had looked away from her struggle. Her family was gone, friends had drifted away, and the system had offered little more than paperwork and waiting lists. But this man, this stranger, who, she now realized from a quick, shocked internet search, was a billionaire hadn't. He had shown up on her doorstep with groceries and a quiet, respectful concern that felt more genuine than any pity she had ever received. She didn't know what to feel. It was confusing, overwhelming, and terrifyingly hopeful. Noah finished his bottle, his little body going limp with sleep. A soft, milk-drunk sigh escaped his lips as his eyes fluttered closed. Ava gently took the bottle and covered him with a small, worn blanket, her touch infinitely tender. Jordan watched the scene unfold, a quiet witness to this profound act of motherly love. A strange, unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest, thawing a part of him he didn't even know was frozen. He felt a connection to this woman and her child, a fragile thread weaving itself between their vastly different worlds. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a very long time, if ever. Ava finally turned her full attention back to him, her expression a complex mix of gratitude and lingering apology. I'm sorry you had to come all this way, she said, her voice stronger now. Jordan simply shook his head, his gaze unwavering. I chose to come, he stated, his voice calm and utterly sincere. It was the simple, unvarnished truth. He could have sent an assistant, he could have wired money, but some instinct, some deep-seated pull, had told him he needed to come himself. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled only by the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping baby. The tension that had filled the room when he first arrived had dissolved, replaced by a quiet sense of peace, of rightness. Jordan's eyes softened as he looked from the sleeping child to the exhausted but resilient mother. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was not just a strange, random encounter. This wasn't the end of their story, a simple transaction of help given and received. This was the beginning of something real, something unexpected, and something that had the power to change both of their lives forever. Jordan sat stiffly on the old wooden chair, doing his best to hide how uncomfortable it was. He couldn't bear the thought of embarrassing Ava. He simply watched her in silence as she moved about the small apartment, a whirlwind of nervous energy. She checked on baby Noah, fussing with the thin blanket that covered him. It was clear his presence made her anxious. She kept tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her hands trembling just slightly. You can go home now if you want, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. Jordan looked at her, his expression calm and unreadable. Do you want me to leave? Ava hesitated. Every rational part of her brain screamed yes. He was a complete stranger, not just any stranger, but a billionaire. A man from a world so far removed from her own, it might as well be another planet. But a deeper, quieter part of her, a part she hadn't listened to in a long time, didn't want him to go. You can stay, she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. If you want. A small, genuine smile touched Jordan's lips. Then I'll stay. Ava sank onto the edge of the worn-out sofa, her body gravitating toward Noah's makeshift crib. Jordan watched as she gently stroked her baby's head, her touch so tender it seemed to warm the very air around them. It stirred something deep inside him, a feeling he hadn't known was dormant. You're a good mom, he said softly, the words feeling utterly true. Ava's head snapped up, surprise widening her eyes. I'm trying, she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. It's all I can do. Jordan nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping over the tired apartment. He saw the cracked paint on the walls, noticed the faint wheeze of the struggling heater, and took in the mismatched, threadbare furniture. This place was a testament to her struggle, but also to her resilience. Trying is more than enough, he said, his voice firm but gentle. Raising a child alone isn't easy. Ava's eyes dropped to her hands, which were now twisting in her lap. Noah's father, he left before he was born. Said he wasn't ready to be a dad. I haven't seen or heard from him since. Jordan felt his jaw tighten, a flash of anger rising in him on her behalf. He forced himself to soften his tone. I'm sorry, Ava. She offered a sad, small shrug, a gesture of weary acceptance. It's okay. I'm used to doing everything alone. You shouldn't have to be, Jordan replied instantly, the words coming from a place of deep conviction. Ava blinked, her gaze locking with his. She was taken aback by the raw sincerity in his voice. Kindness from a stranger was occurrences she was entirely unfamiliar with. Jordan got up and walked toward the window, a draft of cold air seeping through the old frame and brushing against his skin. A baby shouldn't be sleeping in this chill. His heart tightened with a protective instinct he couldn't explain. He turned back to her. Ava? He asked, his voice serious. What do you do for work? She sighed softly. I used to work at a bakery downtown. I loved it, but after Noah came, I couldn't afford a babysitter, and the hours were impossible. Now I just do small online tasks when he's sleeping. It's not much, but it helps a little. Jordan nodded, giving her his full, undivided attention. You're doing your best with what you have. That takes an incredible amount of strength. Ava stared at him, her defenses finally beginning to crumble. Her voice trembled as she asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why? Why are you being so kind to me? Jordan met her gaze directly, his own eyes unwavering. Because you deserve kindness, Ava. Everyone does. She didn't know how to respond. The raw honesty of his statement overwhelmed her, and she quickly looked away, fighting back the sudden sting of tears. Jordan took a tentative step closer, his presence feeling both powerful and safe. Let me help you, he said gently, at least a little. Let me get the heater fixed. Maybe buy some groceries. Ava immediately stiffened, her pride flaring up like a shield. I don't want your pity. It's not pity, he countered softly, his voice a low murmur that wrapped around her. It's respect. I respect what you're doing here, more than you know. Before Ava could even process his words, a loud, aggressive knock shattered the quiet of the apartment. She froze, her body going rigid with fear. Jordan's head whipped toward the door instantly. Bang, bang, bang. The pounding grew more insistent, followed by a rough, deep male voice shouting through the thin wood. Ava, I know you're in there. Open the door. Ava's face went completely pale, all the color draining away as if she'd seen a ghost. Jordan's eyes narrowed, his protective instincts now on high alert. He looked at her, his voice low and urgent. Ava, who is that? She could barely get the words out, her breath shaking uncontrollably as she whispered, It's him. It's Noah's father. The next morning, Jordan Hawley woke up long before the sun even thought about rising. For the first time in years, a genuine excitement pulsed through him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since he was a kid. This wasn't about a multi-million-dollar deal or a new business venture. This was about Rachel and Lily. It was astonishing how quickly they had become so important to him. He dressed in record time, skipping his usual meticulous routine, and drove his sleek car towards Rachel's humble apartment building. On the way, he made a stop. He bought a special breakfast pancakes, carefully shaped like little hearts, a bowl of fresh, colorful fruit, and warm chocolate milk just for Lily. When he arrived and knocked on the door, it was Lily who answered. Her face lit up with a brilliant smile. Jordan, you came back? She squealed, leaping into his arms for a hug. Rachel appeared a moment later, looking surprised but undeniably happy. You didn't have to bring breakfast, she said, a soft smile playing on her lips. I wanted to, Jordan replied, his voice gentle. Both of you deserve a beautiful morning. They all sat together around the small kitchen table. The space was cozy, filled with the warmth of their shared meal. Lily was a whirlwind of stories, chatting nonstop about school, her friends, and her big dream of becoming a doctor someday. Jordan listened to every word, a constant smile on his face, completely captivated. Rachel watched them, her heart swelling with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long, long time. She had never seen any man, let alone a man like Jordan, care for them with such genuine tenderness. After breakfast, Rachel walked Jordan down to his car. Thank you, she said, her voice sincere, for everything. Yesterday it was a lot to take in. I know, Jordan said softly, but I meant every word. I want to help. Rachel's gaze dropped to the ground. I'm just afraid, she confessed. People in my life have a history of making promises and then breaking them. I can't let Lily get hurt. Jordan gently reached out and lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. I would never, ever hurt either of you. Just as he said it, his phone buzzed, shattering the quiet moment. A video call. The name on the screen made his jaw tighten. Richard Hawley, his father, a man known for his iron will and cold, calculating nature. Jordan, his father's voice boomed from the speaker, sharp and disapproving. I heard about this woman and her child. Are you out of your mind? Dating a poor, single mother? Do you have any idea how that looks for the Hale family? Her name is Rachel, Jordan said, his voice low and firm. And her daughter is Lily, and they are good people. Good people don't matter. His father snapped back, his voice dripping with disdain. Status matters. Money matters. You bring this girl into your life, and you will ruin everything we've built." A surge of anger, hot and unfamiliar, rose in Jordan's chest. "Maybe your version of life isn't the one I want anymore." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "What did you just say?" his father finally managed. "I said I'm done pretending," Jordan replied, his voice unwavering. "You taught me how to run a business, not how to love. And honestly, Dad, I think I'm finally learning what love is." Now from them, without waiting for a response, Jordan ended the call. Rachel was standing nearby, her eyes wide with shock. "Jordan, you didn't have to do that for me?" "Yes," he said, turning back to her, his expression resolute. "I did." Later that day, Jordan took them to a beautiful, sprawling park. Lily, full of energy, immediately ran ahead to play on the swings, her laughter echoing in the afternoon air. Rachel sat on a nearby bench, her hands trembling just slightly. "Jordan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're a billionaire? You come from a completely different world. What if everyone thinks I'm just using you for your money? What if your business partners and your family talk badly about us?" Jordan sat down beside her. "Let them talk," he said calmly. "People will always talk. But I know who you are. You're a strong mother, a good woman. You're someone who never gave up, no matter how hard it got." Rachel's eyes filled with tears that she'd held back for too long. "You have no idea how many nights I cried, thinking I was failing Lily." "You didn't fail her," Jordan said, his voice incredibly gentle. "You protected her. You worked your fingers to the bone for her, and you never, ever let her feel unloved. That, Rachel, is true strength." He reached over and took her hand in his. "I want to be a part of your life. Not to control it, and not to save you, but to stand with you, side by side." Rachel wiped her tears, a real, hopeful smile finally breaking through. I want that too, but slowly, we have to be careful." "For Lily," Jordan nodded in understanding. "We'll go as slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere." Just then, Lily came running back, her face beaming with joy. "Mom, Jordan! Look!" she shouted, holding up her discovery. "I found a heart-shaped leaf." Jordan scooped her up into his arms and smiled. "Well, that means something special." "What does it mean?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Jordan looked over at Rachel, his gaze full of meaning. "It means," he said, "that love always finds a way." Rachel's heart felt light for the first time in forever. A week passed. Jordan invited them to his home, a stunningly beautiful house right on the edge of a serene lake. It wasn't a display of wealth. It was an invitation into his world, a gesture to show them he wanted them there. He had planned something. As Rachel and Lily stood near the water's edge, watching the sunset paint the sky, Jordan handed Lily a small, pink box. Lily opened it, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. Inside, nestled on a velvet cushion, was a delicate necklace with a tiny, shimmering silver star. "For me?" she whispered in awe. "Yes," Jordan said softly, "'cause you're the brightest star in your mom's life, and now in mine, too." Lily threw her arms around his neck, hugging him with all her might. Then, Jordan turned to Rachel. "I don't want this to be just a fleeting moment," he said, his voice earnest. "I want to build a real future with both of you." Rachel's heart began to beat faster. "Jordan, are you sure? Are you really sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life," he said. "You came into my life by a complete accident. But now you're the best thing that has ever happened to me." Rachel stepped closer, her doubts finally melting away, and wrapped her arms around him. Jordan held her gently, as if she were the most precious treasure in the world. Lily, seeing her mom and Jordan hugging, giggled and joined in, squeezing herself between them. And in that moment, under the soft, golden glow of the setting sun, they looked like a real family. A family created not by bloodlines or last names, but by fate, by simple kindness, and by a single message sent to the wrong number. A message that had accidentally, beautifully, changed all of their lives forever.